Hi, and welcome to today's Memories Made video. I'm designer Jen Gallacher, and this is a scrapbooking process series. And if you've missed any of the videos in this series, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or at least visit to see some of the projects you might have missed. So today I'm going to be doing a layout about my daughter getting her ears pierced and how I go about picking photos for a layout. I don't try and use every photo I take. I tend to take more photos than I'm going to use because some of the photos don't turn out, even with digital cameras. So typically, if I have a photo that I like, for instance, this one, her ears are turned and you can see her pierced ear. I may enlarge that particular photo, and then supporting photos I may crop or leave smaller. So if you're working with 4x6, the photo that you want to draw attention to is the photo that best tells the side of the story you want to tell. So maybe for a different project, you would focus on a different photo as opposed to a journaling from a different person's perspective. You might focus on a completely different photo from the same event. So that's how I go about picking photos. Now I'm trying to use up some of my scrapbooking stash, and I do keep papers that are a little bit older. And this is from an older collection from Echo Park Paper called For the Record. And I loved this rust red pattern paper, and it has doilies in the background. And then I've used my scissors and just simply snipped on the bottom here. And I'm going to attach that at the top. Then from another collection by Echo Park Paper, I found this fun script pattern paper. It has this really cool black parenthetical, it looks like a little parentheses to me, pattern on the back, and it has a tan script. Now this particular paper is from Pink Paisley and is new. So when you are trying to recreate any of my projects, a quick way to find products is to search by color. And at 2Ps you can simply type in yellow or red or white or script or butterfly or doily, and you can find these kinds of elements. Now I want to do some stamping, and I'm going to be using an olive green, which will appear in some embellishments later in this project. And I'm going to be using a stamp set from Hampton Art that was a partnership with Echo Park Paper, and it's the O Snap stamp set, and I'm going to use this large doily. And when I'm choosing colors, I especially like Stampin' Up! Inks, but there are a lot of different ink companies. This is a water-based dye ink. And I pick a slightly darker color than the cardstock or pattern paper on which I'm stamping, and that allows it to show up. And that might seem like common sense, but sometimes you just don't think about it and you grab a color you like. But you always need to go at least a shade darker, and sometimes two, to get the effect that you want. Now you can see that when I initially stamped, it didn't give me the smoothest image, and that's probably due to this texture being pretty high. So what I'll do is I'll flip the cardstock over, and it's a little bit more smooth on the back, and then we'll try it again. And I place a foam base underneath my scratch pattern paper so that I can press firmly into my design, and you can see it's a little bit cleaner on the back. So I will just kind of overlap the design until I get a row of doily looking images, and I just eyeball where I want them placed. You don't have to be perfect. Make sure you get good inking on there. You just keep going until the pattern is completely stamped. If you wanted to go even a shade darker, you could use a Versamark ink pad and clear embossing ink. That is a good way to always get a true match to your colors, is just using clear embossing powder and Versamark or embossing ink. So there you can see my strip with the doilies. And we'll cut this down to mount on top of those other pennants that I've already cut. And I'm just going to eyeball it and cut it on the diagonal. And then I want it to stand out a little bit, and I usually like to use some ink to do that. And I'll just use a pigment ink pad. They're usually a little bit softer, and I'll just ink the edges, and I typically use brown. I also have some Prima ink pads that are chalk ink pads that you could use that would be fun for this project as well. And they're just little iron shapes that you can drag across your project. So go ahead and adhere this to the creamy white pattern paper. And then a accent color that appears a lot is gold on some of the embellishments I'm going to be using, as well as this yellow pattern paper. So I'm going to take some gold tape, and it doesn't look like tape, but it actually does have an adhesive background. And I'm going to just cut it at a diagonal. And then you have to peel off that white backing to make it stick like tape. So then you just peel off that clear backing. You can stick it down on your project. And then you can either trim off the top or simply fold it over, and I'm just going to trim it off. So this comes in a variety of colors and a variety of widths, and that is available in the two-piece store. I'm going to attach the large photo at the bottom of the layout. And then for the journaling, I have printed out on craft cardstock just a journaling that discusses how she didn't have any idea that we were going to take her to get her ears pierced, because she tends to get worried about anything where there might be blood involved, and so we kind of surprised her. So I discussed that in the journaling. Make sure you tell the backstory and not just comments like, my daughter got her ears pierced. You want to be able to remember all the parts of the story. Just attach that and overlap that bottom part of the photo. Now for the top part of the layout, I'm going to be overlapping some fun die cuts and things that I have collected. I have a doily that is just in my stash, and then I have some die cuts from Pink Paisley, and we're going to just add these to the page. And these are fun rust colored as well as gold and some olive greens, which determined the additional pattern papers that I was going to place. Now I'm going to place the extra photo inside a frame. That's a great way to draw attention to your secondary photos. I want to make sure that it overlaps the photo and frames it in the way you've envisioned. And then you can place this on the layout as well. And you can see that I'm not doing them perfectly level. I'm creating kind of a grid. We're going to attach the doily behind the two cards. We'll just tuck them back here. Then to build up this particular journaling card, I'm going to use the circle die cut. And I like that all of these that you're seeing right now, I pulled from the same collection kit. And that makes designing so much easier. Now, one fun thing you can do is you can layer die cuts by using some adhesive foam squares, which is what I'm going to do, this little balloon die cut. And that makes it stand up a little bit more. We'll just layer it right in there. Then I'm going to add this label die cut at the bottom of the secondary photo. And I'm going to connect all three items by overlaying it. So it connects the small photo, the banner, and this bottom photo. And then I'm going to use a butterfly pin, and I'm going to center this butterfly on top of this tiny butterfly pin. And I don't want to stick it through the actual die cut, so I'm going to turn it over and then just using any color of washi tape. This is one way washi tape is functional. I'm going to just go ahead and tape that pin in place. You can rip off any excess that you have. And just make sure it's adhered nice and well. So that's one way you can add a pin to the back of a die cut. And again, I want this pop dotted. So I'm going to use some more adhesive foam squares. And we'll mount this right in the middle of that label. So you can see how I'm just kind of layering different die cuts and embellishments. Then I have a die cut which I've cut from this olive green, and I cut it with my Silhouette machine, and it's a leaf die cut. And we'll add some adhesive to the back of it. And because a lot of the embellishments are nature inspired, that's what made me think of adding a leaf. Plus I wanted to bring in a little bit more of that olive green color. And we'll just add that at the top there. Now for a title block, I'm going to add a older die cut from My Mind's Eye, and it had the gold accents and it had some brown as well. And it's from an old Lost and Found collection called Sunshine Forever title. And we'll just add that here. And then it had within that same collection pack from Pink Paisley some chevron pieces. And how I determine where the points should go is where I want the eye to go. And I'm going to move the eye across the page away from the main photo. I want to leave enough space that I can do that. So I'm just going to overlap the bottom of that die cut. And I'm going to overlap the two chevron pieces, and I'm actually going to pop dot this second one just to make it a little more interesting. I like to create some depth and shadow on my layouts. Just overlap that there. And then I have some buttons that I have tied with twine, and we'll add these to the project as well. This is the fun part where you just start adding embellishments. And I have a smaller button, and I work in different scale. And then at the top of this die cut, I'm going to add a small tab that was from that same ephemera pack, but I want to darken it up a little bit, so I'm going to rub the edges with some stamping ink. And then I'm going to attach it with both some adhesive as well as a stapler. So we'll just slide the stapler onto the layout and just add one staple to the tab. And it just creates a fun little element on your layout. Then to this die cut up top, I wanted to add a little bit more texture. So I'm going to use this fun little corrugated heart, and I'm going to ink the edges of it with some pigment stamping ink. You can see that it darkens it up a little bit. You can even drag it all the way across, and you can do this with any kind of ink pad that's a little more what I would call juicy. We'll add that to the little balloon die cut. And then I have an additional button tied with twine. I'm going to go ahead and add that on top as well. Then I'm going to add a Canson tan photo corner to the upper part of this photo here. And then I want to add a little bit of the metal that I used both in the pin and the staple. So I'm going to staple a little bit of this journaling. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to staple it a few times. It doesn't have to be straight. It just adds a little bit of a metallic look to the page. Then to finish off the layout, I have a accordion folded circle sticker from Basic Ray. I'm going to add a little bit of extra adhesive to it because I've had it for a while, and sometimes that adhesive starts to break down. We're just trying to fill this visual space. Then I have this Too Cute circle from the Pink Paisley ephemera pack. And I have this yellow circle. We'll just create a visual triangle, and then finally in the center of that yellow circle I'm going to add a very small pearlized button to the center. So there you have a layout, and I've showed you a couple of techniques and tricks for incorporating older and newer items, selecting photos, and selecting ink for a stamping project. Thank you for joining me for today's Memories Made video. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss any of these videos, and visit my blog for the complete supply list for completing this layout.